Kyoto, Japan's majestic city of ancient temples and serene gardens, offers superb cultural treasures and a variety of sensual delights. Your most enjoyable activity will probably be strolling through the artistically designed garden landscapes with their winding paths, tranquil ponds, stately trees, lush vegetation, and traditional wooden temples. We are walking through 8 of the most beautiful and popular temple gardens in Kyoto, Japan. Kyoto is surrounded on all sides by numerous temples, shrines, and gardens, and they're located within a few miles of the town center. A reasonable 2-day strategy for dealing with the array is focus attention in one direction. In our case, we looked at Kyoto's east side, Higashiyama, which has a very high concentration of sites nestled on the edge of the lovely hilly topography. Winding paths, tranquil ponds, stately trees, lush vegetation, and traditional wooden temples. These sublime gardens unfold as you walk along paths that lead through changing vistas around each bend, where you can stop frequently to absorb each new perspective, looking left, right, up, and down. These different views are enhanced by small statues and footbridges, bamboo railings, temple backdrops, and glimpses of distant mountains, all exquisitely arranged to be appreciated in moments of reflection. Many of these temple sites on the east side are in walking distance of each other, reaching about 4 miles from south to the north end of the cluster in Higashiyama. So you can walk between some of these sites. However, when you add up the amount of walking within each site and time spent shopping along the approach lanes, the combined distance is going to reach well over 10 miles. So you'll sometimes want to use buses, the subway, and taxis. The temples we are visiting are Fushimi-Inari-Taisha, with thousands of red torii gates weaving through the forest. Tofuku-ji, striking checkerboard patterns in Zen rock gardens. Kiyomizu-dera, a UNESCO World Heritage Site with breathtaking views. Chion-in, deep natural landscapes creating harmonious and serene gardens. Nanzen-ji, with impressive temple structures and an aqueduct. Heian, expansive gardens mirroring the splendor. Honen-in, a moss-covered garden with subtle beauty. Ginkaku-ji, another UNESCO Heritage Site, a refined Zen garden. Now we're beginning our walk through the gardens at our southernmost temple, Fushimi-Inari-Taisha. The Fushimi-Inari-Taisha shrine in Kyoto is most famous for its long rows of vermilion torii gates, nearly 5,000 gates in all. Various temple structures are in front, including the famous Romon Gate, but the main attraction is that vast network of torii gates, which have made Inari one of the most popular destinations in town. Whenever you see the torii gate, you know that this is not a Buddhist temple, but instead it's a Shinto shrine. And this is the main shrine of this particular Shinto sect that's dedicated to the gods of rice and sake. Throughout Japan, there are 40,000 other Inari shrines, but this is the principal one. The Inari shrine is a wonderful Shinto experience. You walk through all of these different gateways along a path that winds through the forest. This is the largest collection of torii gates anywhere in the world. You could spend 1 or 2 hours walking this pathway that extends for almost 3 miles. The visit you're watching was in early December, and so it was not crowded. And yes, the temperatures were kind of nippy, but comfortable. And we saw some cats. Notice the steam coming out of their breath. Temperatures in the morning like this were in the 30s. The gates are surrounded by a natural forest and by various small cultivated gardens with some ponds here and there. You can walk all the way up the hillside to the top of Mount Inari, which is about 240 meters high, and you won't get lost. Just follow the path, follow the tunnels of torii gates. The biggest problem with the Inari Shrine is that it's just too popular. It's being loved to death. Remember, we're traveling in early December when it's very peaceful, quiet, and nearly empty. The crowds during the season, during the day, are phenomenal. There will be probably 1,000 people all walking through these gates, so it can get pretty congested. For example, if you look at the comments on TripAdvisor about this temple shrine area, every other comment mentions the crowding, people in the way, people taking pictures, people stopping and talking and kind of interfering with the experience. Now, these people are visiting during the high season and during the middle of the day. So the way to avoid it is come in the off season. As we are, it's December as we're walking around, early December. It's a perfect time to be in Kyoto. Or if you're here in the busy season, come very early. You can come just after sunrise or come very late in the day, just an hour before sunset, and you'll have the added benefit of some extra rich colors and fewer people. The site is especially popular during the New Year's holiday, Japan's most important festivity. Of course, if you enjoy people watching, then this is no problem. You can see it as a bonus. There'll be lots of folks out here appreciating the site, and most of them are Japanese tourists, so it's like an extra bonus for you in that regard. People from throughout Japan love to come to Kyoto and visit these wonderful gardens and shrines. The main shrine structure was built in the year 1499, and all of the torii gates were added subsequently over many centuries. And you can get to the end and then just turn around and walk back through that same tunnel, or you could continue. It does make a complete loop circuit if you walk all the way up to the top of the hill. But you might not want to go that far, so feel free anytime to just walk in part of the way and then turn around and walk back out the same way that you came in. From the Inari Shrine, we continue north about a half a mile to the temple and gardens of Tofuku-ji. The Tōfuku-ji Buddhist temple is considered one of the 5 great Zen temples of Kyoto. Originally built in the year 1236, it burned down after a couple of centuries and then was rebuilt in the 15th century to the original plans and stands today as a fine example of a medieval Zen temple. Typical of most Kyoto temples, it's a group of more than a dozen wooden structures in a lush garden setting. Especially famous for the very large Sanmon Temple Gate, 65 feet high, and the bright fall colors of maple leaves when you're here in the autumn season. Here too we have a small Shinto shrine area with another torii tunnel leading up to a staircase that brings you up a hill. At this temple complex of Tōfuku-ji, there are about a dozen sub-temples. One of the things it's most noted for is the fall colors. We arrived in early December, but still there was the lingering color of the maple leaves, which were really bright and spectacular. Another week or two, they'll all be blown down. By mid-December, late December, the colors will be largely gone. Of course, the peak of colors would happen in the month of November. And it would be especially beautiful here at Tōfuku-ji. They have this small gully, which is the most famous area for the viewing of the fall colors. And we were looking in particular for the Abbot's Hall, because at the Abbot's Hall there is a very classical pebble garden that we wanted to see. And finally we got there. Be sure to explore well enough that you can find that little-known Zen meditation pebble garden at the Abbot's Hall and linger here a while to absorb the harmonious serenity. Smaller pebble gardens can be found scattered around various other temples. True aficionado of this style of pebble garden accented by symbolic clusters of large rocks might want to visit the most famous version at Ryoan-ji Temple in Kyoto's northwest outskirts. Tōfuku-ji is a Zen Buddhist temple. And these are aids to meditation. You sit and quiet your mind. And this kind of pebble garden is designed to be looked at rather than walked through. So there's a veranda, and over on the side we have moss-covered hills that symbolize mountains. The rocks symbolize islands, it's said, and the pebbles symbolize the sea. But at the same time, ascribing all of these meanings to such a garden is somewhat limiting, because in Zen itself, the process is emptying your mind and just gazing out upon this beautiful, calm, and relaxing vista. And you pay an admission to go into each of the sections of the temple, and it's well worth it. It's a little confusing because guides at the gateways who sell you the tickets don't speak any English, and they'll give you a little pamphlet that'll have a map, and that will help guide you around through the grounds. And always the colors around us here at this temple garden were really, really enhancing our total experience. Tōfuku-ji was listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1994, one of many in Kyoto. There is no admission charge to the complex of Tōfuku-ji, and you can walk freely around some of the grounds, but there is an admission fee for the Zen gardens and that bridge to heaven with the great view of the fall colors. Tōfuku-ji Temple is located on the eastern side of Kyoto, about a mile southeast of the Kyoto train station, so you could walk here from the center, or take a bus or train. The Tofuku-ji Station of Japan Rail stops nearby, as well as the Keihan Electric Railway. Kiyomizu-dera is our next temple garden destination. Kiyomizu-dera is the most popular temple in all of Kyoto, and it's usually crowded, often with lots of tour groups. This video was photographed in the off-season, which was the first week of December, and even then it was fairly busy, comfortable, nice to have some other people around, so no problem. But if you're here in the peak season during the summer, in the middle of the day, there'll be so many people you'll have a hard time getting to the railing to enjoy a clear view of the beautiful scenery. The main hall is the most spectacular single item here. It's up on large wooden stilts and designated as a national treasure. Large verandas and main halls like this were constructed at many popular sites in the past to accommodate large numbers of pilgrims. And then we have the views looking out across from the main hall into downtown, looking up towards the temple, which is up on the hillside. An old tradition held that if you could survive a 13-meter jump from this stage, your wish would be granted. Over 200 people jumped, and most of them survived, but that practice is now prohibited. You can also buy good luck charms at various kiosks here, and omikuji, which are the paper fortunes, and incense and various other talismans. Shoppers will be kept quite busy at the various kiosks, and you can also get a bite to eat at some of the food stands. The word Kiyomizu means clear water or pure water. The Ottawa waterfall runs off the nearby hills in 3 channels of water that fall into a fountain, and then visitors can catch and drink the water, which is believed to have wish-granting powers. And it's said that you will gain health, longevity, and success in studies by drinking from the 3 different streams. These typical incense burners offer a smoke that's designed to chase away the evil spirits. The temple is actually so old that it predates Kyoto itself. It dates back to the 700s, before Kyoto was founded as a city. Of course, the structures have been rebuilt numerous times since then. There are some 30 buildings here on the temple grounds, and most were constructed in the early Edo period, the early 1630s. And the different altars and shrines within the temple grounds, images of the Buddha here and there.
There's a Shinto shrine just as part of the temple complex. As you often find here, the Buddhist and the Shinto blended together, the two religions harmoniously coexisting in Japan.
Kiyomizu-dera has something for everyone. First of all, it's an important religious site where serious pilgrims come to pray. Young people come looking for good fortune. Visitors arrive to see the sights. History buffs have much to admire. Shoppers are made happy by vendors, and all fall under the spell of Kyoto's most popular temple.
During the busy seasons, this temple gets extremely crowded with the tour groups. They come by the busloads, but generally early December is a wonderful time to be touring the temples of Kyoto. It's just not very crowded. There's a monk waiting to receive some offerings.
Now we're walking over to our next temple garden. Chion-in is the main temple of the Jodo sect of Japanese Buddhism, which has millions of followers throughout the country and 7,000 other temples. But Chion-in is the main temple where this branch of Buddhism was created by Honen way back in the 12th century. The main entrance Sanmon Gate is the largest wooden gate in Japan, 24 meters tall or 79 feet, and dates back to the early 1600s. The vast temple grounds include 106 buildings, and several beautiful gardens will take you walking through. We were fortunate to be able to enter the Mie-do, the main building of the temple complex. Inside, a regular service was taking place with the shomyo, which is the melodic chanting of a sutra. There is no charge for walking around in the temple grounds, but if you want to enter the gardens, you do pay a small fee. You can pay separately for one or for both gardens. The two gardens at Chion-in are smaller than what you'll find at many of the other temples of Kyoto, but the gardens are quite lovely, and we're going to walk you through them. The Hojo Garden is designated by Kyoto City as a famous scenic spot. It's a garden designed around a pond. We're enjoying it with the remains of the autumn foliage of early December. You can also come in the spring and see the cherry blossoms, or you'll experience the fresh greenery in the summertime.
It's a very small garden that you could walk around in 5 minutes and exit, but it's so pretty that it's certainly worth stopping and standing and enjoying each of the views from its own particular angle, which of course is the way these gardens are designed. They're strolling gardens, so the idea is to walk along with your eyes open and stop here and there, look this way, look that way, and enjoy all the different views as they unfold.
As you stroll quietly along on these curved paths, the landscape and scenery in the garden is revealed to you at each turn, at each curve, and then that same sight disappears as you continue walking. The reveal, the surprise, linger a moment for appreciation and contemplation, look around, and then move beyond. It's all part of this magical experience of the strolling garden. Much different than a garden where you're just standing in one spot at a lookout point, perhaps, looking out at a view. The strolling garden is a totally immersive experience. The cemetery on the edge of the gardens is densely packed with burials of ashes of the faithful. The central premise of the Jodo sect was that the Buddhist deity Amida had created a paradise that anyone could enter after death. One needed only to recite the name of Amida in faith. Jodo literally means pure land and refers to Amida's paradise, and this new sect of Buddhism gave common people the same opportunity for salvation as priests or aristocrats, and that's why it became very popular among the masses.
As a couple of monks head on in for some quiet meditation, this garden has a rich variety of features. ranging from the cemetery to smaller temple buildings, the staircases. Be careful now. You don't want to be looking at your camera while you're walking down steps like that.
We'll be leaving the temple soon, but first appreciating more of the shrines. One of Japan's most breathtaking statues is next door in a wooden sub-temple, a serene golden Buddha 10 feet high.
Designed for prayer and meditation. One of the prettiest Buddha statues we've ever seen.
Nanzen-ji is our next destination, another beautiful temple with a garden all around it. Nanzen-ji is a vast complex with numerous sub-temples, gardens, and shrines sprawling up the hillside, including another pebble garden, hiking trails, waterfalls, and a mountain glen. Nanzen-ji was bestowed the title of First Temple of the Land and is considered by many to be the most famous and important Zen temple in the world. It's designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Nanzen-in is a smaller sub-temple behind the main Nanzen-ji, and it's one of the oldest and yet one of the least well-known sub-temples, perhaps because it's slightly hidden away. It started out as a retirement villa for the Emperor Kameyama. Perhaps the main feature of Nanzen-in is the small pond and quiet moss garden surrounded by momiji trees and azaleas. And the pond has several tiny islets, including one that's shaped like the character for heart. The pond garden was built in the strolling style, representing the late Kamakura period, and retains an image of beautiful scenery surrounded by deep forest with an exceptional atmosphere of peace and tranquility. It was designated a National Historic and Scenic Site in 1923.
It's a very small garden that you could walk around in 5 minutes and exit, but it's so pretty that it's certainly worth stopping and standing and enjoying each of the views from its own particular angle, which of course is the way these gardens are designed. They're strolling gardens, so the idea is to walk along with your eyes open and stop here and there, look this way, look that way, and enjoy all the different views as they unfold.
Sometimes you'll get lucky and come across a beautiful scene like this that just has a strong personal attraction for some reason. You just can't take your eyes off it. You can't leave it. You just have to stop and look and walk one way, walk around the other way, come back again, and just drop everything and enjoy this vista.
The rocks, of course, are not carved rocks. They're natural rocks, but they're carefully placed into each spot so that it looks natural, and yet it's been shaped and cultivated in an ideal way.
The temple was first established in the year 1291 by the Emperor Kameyama, who built it on the site of his previous palace. It's also the headquarters of the Nanzen-ji branch of Rinzai-zen. Typical of the old wooden temple buildings, it was destroyed by fire several times and finally rebuilt in 1597 and then expanded over time with the addition of more gardens and sub-temples.
And then we walked out on the main grounds of the Temple of Nanzen and came across what looked like something from ancient Rome, a large aqueduct.
The canal called Sosui is a channel that brings water from Lake Biwa, passing the Nanzen-ji temple and right on into Kyoto City. The construction of the canal was pretty recent. It was begun in 1881 and finished in 1890. And it was primarily to bring water to the city, and also it added some hydroelectric power and provided irrigation water and turned water wheels for spinning cotton.
Of course, there's no connection to Rome. This is a Japanese aqueduct.
They were
experts at irrigation of the rice terraces and funneling water from one area to another.
And even though this aqueduct is not ancient, It has a historic character with the brick construction and graceful arches that makes it blend in beautifully with the temple grounds. The temple complex reached its maximum size in the period between 1616 and 1868, when it grew to contain 62 sub-temples, spread over nearly 400,000 square meters of garden area. But this ended during the Meiji period after 1868, when Shintoism began to replace Buddhism as the dominant belief of Japan. By then, the temple was partly demolished, leaving only the 9 sub-temples that we have today. The tallest structure is the Sanman Gate, which is a gateless gate, typical of the Zen, and you can climb a staircase up to the top for a view. The building called Kuri has a geometrical beauty produced by white walls and black building materials and the lines of the roof, so characteristic of the Zen style of architecture. When you get to Kyoto, be sure to visit Nanzen-ji Temple, and while you're there, look around behind the aqueduct for the little pond, the gardens of Nanzen-in. Go ahead and spend the extra yen to get in there. It's definitely worth it. One of the prettiest little ponds you'll ever see. This is part of our series on the temples and gardens of eastern Kyoto, the Higashiyama district. We're traveling west a few blocks to another great temple with a beautiful garden and pond. Arriving at Heian-jingu.
This is actually one of the newer temples in Kyoto, built at the end of the 19th century, and of course built in a very traditional style. This kind of architecture really dates back 300, 400, even 500 years.
This reproduction of an imperial palace was constructed in 1895, complete with shrines and a vast garden complex with ponds, islands, and a Chinese-Japanese style of landscaping.
And it's a very large temple complex with some beautiful gardens out in the back. There's always well-tended paths through the gardens. You notice all of the colors in the trees. We were quite fortunate to be catching the tail end of the fall season. Even though it's the first week of December, the weather was fairly moderate, and generally the colors do linger into the early part of December. Often you have a pond or several ponds like this with pretty reflections of the vegetation. The temples have wonderful wooden architecture,
And yet the garden all around
probably is even more of an interesting attraction than the buildings themselves.
One reason this grand temple and gardens were created in the late 19th century was in reaction to Kyoto being replaced as the capital of Japan by Tokyo. For 1,000 years, Kyoto had been the capital of the country, and when the capital was moved to Tokyo in 1868, it caused some decline in the prosperity and mood of the city, and this temple was constructed 30 years later as a response of the city to revitalize. The garden all around the pond is 30,000 square meters in size and divided in 4 sections with a variety of birds such as kingfishers and large falcons.
Here's a gardener out in a boat reaching some of the areas that are on islands in the middle of the pond.
Afterwards, you might take a walk through the public park in front towards that huge metal torii, the biggest in town, and consider a visit to the National Museum of Modern Art with its large collection of paintings and ceramics. The Kyoto Municipal Museum of Art is also just behind. Next, we visit the smaller temple garden of Honen-in.
And as we walk through this series of gardens here in the next few minutes of the program, I'll be describing the gardens and mixing in a little description of some of the basic principles of Buddhism too.
This is Honen-in, which is a good spot to visit early in the morning because it opens at 7 a.m. and it's free.
So you don't have to worry about the gates being closed when you arrive here at Honen with images of the Buddha, the enlightened one who lived in India around 500 BC. He established a philosophy of life which has evolved into one of the world's great religions. In fact, has taken on a life of its own and gone quite far beyond what the Buddha had envisioned. But the basic Buddhist beliefs come down to the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path and the 5 precepts. So as we stroll around, let's consider these Buddhist principles in this Buddhist temple garden. The Four Noble Truths start with the idea that life involves suffering, and there's a cause of this suffering, which is ignorant craving and attachment. And there's a way out of the suffering to nirvana and liberation by following the Noble Eightfold Path.
Here is the final temple and garden complex in our wanders through Kyoto. We've arrived at Ginkaku-ji, which is one of the prettiest of all the temples and gardens in Kyoto. It's in the Tsukiyama style of hillside garden. A dramatic entry lined by tall hedges leads into another world, a lyrical dreamscape of ponds surrounded by gardens, dotted with statues and linked together by exquisite bamboo railings that guide you along the very pleasant and calm footpaths. Try to arrive when it opens at 9 a.m. to enjoy its tranquility undisturbed by the bus loads that are soon to come. The Japanese garden is a miniature and idealized view of nature, and this style of garden is meant for strolling, for moving around from one place to another, and as you go, there will be scenes revealed and then left behind. It's hide and reveal, appearing then disappearing. These gardens are not laid out straight, and nor do they have a single focus. Instead, the paths are designed with curves and bends, and they'll go up and down. It's made to look natural, but of course everything here is carefully designed. Ginkaku-ji is a Zen temple that represents the Higashiyama culture of the Muromachi period back in the 15th century. It was originally built as a retirement villa and gardens between 1460 and 1480 by Ashikaga Yoshimasa, who arranged for his property to become this Zen temple after his death. The main structure is similar in design to that of Ginkaku-ji, another famous temple in Kyoto that was built by his grandfather. The temple is now associated with the Rinzai branch of Zen. Obviously, the best way to enjoy these gardens without crowds is come in the off-season, as we are here in early December, which is really the perfect time to be in the gardens of Kyoto. You have the fall colors still lingering, and if you're here in the middle of the week, especially in early December, there's hardly anybody else around. If you're here on a typical busy day, there are going to be hundreds, maybe 1,000 people in the garden, so that does make it a little difficult to get into that contemplative and meditative mood that the gardens are designed to foster. Instead, you'll have lots of people around. Some of them are shouting at each other, others are waving their selfie sticks around, kids running past you. So it does provide a challenge if you're here in a busy time. There are a few steps to climb as you walk along the main path, but really it's not a strenuous walk. Just about anybody can do it. Anybody who's in normal condition, no problem, you'll love it. Railings are typically made with green bamboo to blend in with the scenery, providing an organic and clean appearance, while at the same time being functional to help you steady yourself and keep you from walking into the garden.
And then you can walk up the hill and gain some lovely views.
The main pavilion is known as Ginkaku, the Silver Pavilion, because originally they were planning to cover its exterior in silver, but that never happened. Instead, the outside has had an unfinished appearance for the last 500 years, which illustrates one of the aspects of wabi-sabi quality. Wabi-sabi was developed as a Japanese worldview or aesthetic based on imperfection and the impermanence of life, deeply rooted in the Zen Buddhist philosophy. It's based on ideas that nothing is perfect or ever finished, and nothing lasts forever. Some of the characteristics of that wabi-sabi aesthetic can be seen in the garden itself. They include asymmetry and irregularity, simplicity, economy and austerity, modesty, and appreciation of the natural world. Understanding and accepting these concepts was viewed as an important step towards enlightenment, or satori. It's often summarized as wisdom in natural simplicity and flawed beauty. Of course, there are many more dimensions to this profound philosophy and various interpretations of it, such as the Mahayana Buddhist view of the universe, which cautions that genuine understanding cannot be achieved through words or language. It's more nonverbal, involving feelings and sensations. A variety of different moss cover most of the ground surface here, providing different shades and colors, and they like to display it with labels to let you know what varieties are found in the garden. These boxes display 48 different types. And notice the carefully tended sand garden. This is an example of that kare sansui style that we saw with the pebble garden back at Tōfuku-ji at the Abbot's Hall. The garden is arranged in two sections. The upper terrace is in the style of a dry garden with stones and sand and no water, and the lower terrace is designed with changing views as you walk around the pond, very green and luxurious. The Buddhist temple gardens were designed for contemplation and meditation, not so much for recreation and fun and pleasure, although modern travelers understandably are really just walking around and enjoying the beautiful sights, not thinking so much about meditation and philosophy. But peaceful contemplation can certainly add more dimensions to your experience here in the gardens.
Remarkable combination of styles of landscape architecture right here. This is definitely a place that you must visit, Ginkaku-ji.
We frequently upload new movies, so please subscribe to our channel and click that little alarm bell so you'll be notified. And if you enjoyed the movie, how about a thumbs up? And we always welcome comments down below. Or if you have questions about the destination, make note and we'll answer them. Thanks for watching.